Good morning, everyone, and happy Thursday to you. Yeah, this week is flying by so fast, so fast. Oh, wow, excuse me. And I want to say thank you guys for tuning in for another episode of the Grief Let's Talk About It podcast. And as always, we have an amazing guest for you guys today. You guys, please, this is going to be a trigger warning because the things that we're going to be talking about. So you guys, please get your questions and comments ready. But now, before we get started, if this is your first time tuning in, do me a favor, head over to my YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button, hit that bell notification so you be notified every time we drop a new episode. Now, if you know anybody who can benefit from the conversations that we have, please share this with them. And if you have any questions or comments, put them in the comment section, and we're going to be bringing on my next guest. And so, without further ado, I got to find my cursor here. Oh, there she is. Miss Tracy Oeser. Tracy, how you doing this morning?
I'm good, Tony. How are you?
I am doing well. Looking forward to having this conversation with you. But now, before we get started, tell people who you are and tell people where you're from.
So my name's Tracy Oeser. I am the founder of Journey Thru Grief and Postvention Collective, and I am down here in Springfield, Missouri, where we have some nice sunny weather today instead of tornadoes. So I'm excited.
Yeah, isn't it crazy? I've been watching the news. There's a town right now being pummeled by a tornado, isn't it?
Yeah, we're getting them all the way from Texas up to Indiana and through Kansas, Oklahoma, all of it. So we had one come about 20 miles from our house last week, and then it veered off at the last minute. So yeah.
Get used to it. I want you to stay safe. Before we get started, I want to say good morning to everyone who has just tuned in on Instagram, Taming Your Grief from Lexington, Kentucky, and Courthouse Perspective from Florida. Thank you guys for tuning in. And as always, if you guys have any questions or comments, put them in the comment section. We'll be answering those as we go along. So now, Tracy, we've talked. We had an amazing conversation. I love the post that you've been putting up, and hopefully, I can do you justice today. Because man, this is near and dear to my heart because it's something that people don't talk about, but it happens from time to time. And but now, before we get into that, tell people about your journey before your life changed.
Sure. So I grew up in Western Washington, in a little town called Bremerton, across the water from Seattle. And, I grew up there my whole life, graduated from high school there, got married, had a couple kids. And then, unfortunately, like so many, I became a single mom. So I was a single mom there for a bit. And, we're just living the day-to-day life. Kids are going to school, they're in sports. We moved around a couple times, different, cities in that general area. And the kids got up to the high school age, and things just started turning, kind of dark for my daughter. She started struggling with her mental health and, a lot of peer pressure, right? Because she transitioned from junior high up to high school. And she was, starting to struggle. And, I thought as a mom, I was doing, everything I should have done. I was reaching out to the school, reaching out to teachers, taking her to doctors, getting some mental health evaluations. And, in about 6 months, about 6 months into 2006, she made an attempt on her life. And then everything just started spiraling from there, culminating 6 months later when she actually fatally ended her life. So, everything was normal up to, or normal in the sense of normal, right? Up until that point. And then, I was thrust into this new world of devastation and loss and, just not knowing where to turn, where to go. And, a lot of grief, a lot of guilt. Yeah. Just totally turned upside down.
Oh man. My heart is with you.
Thank you.
I, you know, um, there's really no words when it comes to when you're someone's child and taking it on, and I want to
Right.
always respect that space and things like that. Um, but I want to ask a question. Watching your daughter struggle um, before she attempted, how was you as a mother handling the situation up until her first attempt? And then what was your thoughts after?
Well, I'm a very type A personality, right? Everything has to be structured. I have to have lists. Have to have a schedule. Anybody that knows me will tell you I probably drive them absolutely crazy. But, I was, like I said, I was working full time while the kids went to school. And I thought I had it under control. I was,
Mhm.
getting them where they needed to be. I was, attending school functions. I was exhausted, certainly, but I thought I was doing all the right things. I mean, my goal in life was to be a mom and do it right, right. Um, and so, I started questioning when she started struggling with her behavior. I started reaching out to ask, people, professionals, what do I do with this? What is happening? I don't understand. And I was getting a lot of feedback that kids will be kids. She's a girl. She's trying to fit in with her peers. She was having a lot of struggle with making up stories that weren't true.
Mhm.
And again, the counselors were telling me, well, it's how they fit in. They make up stories to see, how they can interact with their friends and maybe sound, better than their friends. And so I was the type, well, I'm still the type, but not as severe as I was then. I was the type that I'm going to go to the experts. If the experts tell me this is how it is, then that's how it is. And I'm
Mhm.
going to go with that. So when they're telling me this is normal and, peer pressure is normal and she'll get through this, I didn't initially see this as a problem, you know.
Right.
And then, like I said, all of a sudden, I get a call at work that from her that she was in the bathroom and she had just tried to make an attempt. And my brain went into total chaos mode. And, I flew out of my office and drove home, which was about 10, 15 minutes. And I called her dad on the way home and I said, will you call her? Um, because at that time we didn't even have cell phones that we were using in the car. And
Right.
so
Right.
I called him as I was running out of the office. I said, please call her and talk to her till I get home. And I got home and medically, she was fine. But my first thought was, what is the right thing to do? And so in my head, the right thing to do
Mhm.
was to call our mental health facility, which I did. And I said, you know, is she in a safe place for the weekend? And I said, yeah, I'm not leaving her. I'm not going to leave her alone. And
Right.
they said, bring her in Monday. And so Monday, she really didn't have a reason why she did it. She said that she knew of a boy who had tried it. So in her head, she really wasn't conveying outwardly why. So I took her in for an evaluation on Monday, and they interviewed her, and they came back and said, "Well, we don't know, what the problem is specifically. She didn't say. She seems fine. Told me to take her to her pediatrician and get her on some medication, and that she probably needs some counseling." So, I mean, this was a whole new world for me. The pediatrician and the counselor aren't the same person necessarily that's going to prescribe medication.
Right.
So I took her to the pediatrician, told her what was going on. She said, here, okay, I'll prescribe this medication and it may work, it may not. We have kids that, come in and we may switch them 3, 4, 5 times on medication till we find the one that works. And it could take 6 to 8 weeks for one to get through, her system. And I mean, I was just baffled, but I'm like, okay, but these are the professionals, that know what they're doing. So this is what they tell me. That's what we're doing. Um, and so we got her on some medication and her behavior changed. She went from wanting to lay in her bed all day to she's up, she's cleaning her room, she's going to school, she's doing all the right stuff. So I said, well, maybe she doesn't need counseling then. Maybe she just needed this, chemical in her brain. And so we went along for about 6 weeks or so. And then the lies, started coming back. She accused, me of something that wasn't happening, but it was enough to get her removed from my house. And she got put into her dad's house. And so at that point, I had less control of the situation because she wasn't in my house.
Right.
And we put her with a therapist because I thought, well, I guess we should have put her with a therapist. So now she was with a therapist, but she was lying to her therapist about events going on in her life. And the therapist believed her over me. It was just ugly. And so in the state of Washington, if a child's, over the age of 13, they can dictate their own medical care. And so she had the ability to say, I don't want you to tell my mom what I'm talking about. I don't want to, anything dictating her healthcare. She could do. I didn't like it. I didn't agree with it. I still don't agree with it. The law is still in place. If we have children who are struggling, I don't feel that they're in the right mental space to say, oh, this is what I need medically. But of course, they still send the parent the bill. I still had to pay for it because financially I was responsible. And so, but anyway, this went on for about 5 months where she was at her dad's and she was going to this therapist. And I could see, from afar, because, we're still talking, not pleasantly always, because it was horrible. I had a lot of resentment. I had a lot of anger at the situation. Nowhere in there did I think, oh, this is going to end, with her taking her life. That wasn't even on my radar because that happens to other people, right? It doesn't happen to good moms that are raising their kids right and teaching them all the right things. And so, 5 months, along these 5 months, she also had kind of a mental breakdown of such, and we ended up in the emergency room, and she convinced the psychologist that she was fine, and I was required to take her back home because she said she was fine, and he didn't deem her to be suicidal. And we got home, and about a week and a half or so later, she was gone. So there's just, so I still have a lot of anger with the mental health system, the way it sits. There's a lot of really great work out there. There's a lot of really great therapists out there. But if you get the perfect storm, so to speak, with just, the right elements, it can cause a lot of damage later on. So, so next thing I know, I was thrown in this, like I said, this kind of abyss of what did I miss? What did I not do? What should I have done? Who should I have talked to? And I've had almost 18 years of retrospect to look back and go, oh, I should have done this and I should have done that. But at the time, I was working with what I had or what I knew.
Yeah. I want to, before I ask you the next question, we got a comment over here from the courthouse perspective. The comment says, that's crazy. Washington has to do something about that BS law. And you said something about that law. I guess my question before I ask a more in-depth question, when did he change that law to where it gave the children control over their care?
Honestly, I really don't know. I have not researched it. It's one of those things that made me angry enough. I want to go down that rabbit hole. I'm sure, anybody could put it in Google and go find out. And, I can't even say that it hasn't changed some since, we're talking 2006 when this happened to me. So maybe they've made some changes along the way. But, I hear through other parents that struggle with, different things with their kids that, they come up against that as well, that, they can dictate their own healthcare. I would take her to just regular medical appointments, checkups, whatever. And they'd say, okay, well, we need you to sit out in the waiting room or out in the hallway so we can talk to her. And I'd be like, why? Well, because she's over the age of 13 and we can, we don't want you in there. So it's messed up. It's messed up on many different levels. And, I try to look at these things and say, well, I can see how we probably got here. We probably had some kids who were not taken care of, that were, abused by people adults in their life. And we put this law into place so that they would have rights to get what they needed and not go through an adult for that. I get that. But when we're talking about a situation like this, where you have a child who's out of control and needs some help and the parent can't intervene, then that's a problem.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, and you got a lot of people that are right there with you. The comments are coming in. You guys keep it coming in. If anybody know when they changed that law, and any suggestions that we can, as grief practitioners, mental health practitioners, what can we do in order to get this back on track to where a 13-year-old doesn't have say so in their own health? Taming your grief. Thank you for that. And the comment goes, at the age 13, they don't even know who they are. I think it's a team decision between the practitioner and the parents, and the child may, but certainly not all up to the child. And thank you for that, Taming your grief. Courthouse perspective. Mm-hmm. It's totally, they say, totally understand your frustration. The courthouse, unfortunately, lets us down more than you may think. As a former administrator of a courthouse, I'm sorry that the law let you down. I think there's many other people out there that is experiencing the same thing as Tracy. LinkedIn user, of course, that is totally dangerous. And
well, my concern is that, it isn't something they put out there to the general public that this is a law. And so you don't know that until you're forced into a situation where that law is used against your situation. So I like to just tell everybody, check your state laws, see, what the age of majority is for your kids to dictate their own health care. And, if you're like in a rural town, small town, you have a small town doctor, they probably don't care. They're probably still going to include you in what's going on. But you get into bigger cities, then, these laws are going to apply most likely, and people don't want liability, so they're going to use them. And then the parent is sitting there going, wait a minute, what's happening? So, just know that this was a problem in Washington State. Check it out for your own state.
And that's a great segue into the next comment from Courthouse perspective. They say, but and everything is situational, which you just really said that too. But again, I listening to this and listen to your story, it frustrates me to no end, because I have been around families who have lost loved ones to suicides. I've seen children. I've seen the effects almost all across the board. And something does need to change with this law. It does. Yeah. Because not everybody has the right answer. And that comes from, that we have to get back to learning how to communicate without medication first. And the reason being, because if we can sit down and the children are able to articulate what's going on with them, then we can go through a process of elimination. No, it's not this. No, it's not this. It could possibly be this, right? And we can start to put strategies into place without medication. Medication should be a last result. And just coming from me, right? And I've seen the effects of medications when people mess up, right? Not necessarily the child or the person, but when the pharmacists mess up, I've experienced that aspect of it, and I almost lost my son the first time from an overdose from his pharmacist when she mixed this medication wrong. And so that was my first scare. But I never, this 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 law, there's so many holes that can be poked in it. What would you, I guess this is my question, in knowing this law now, what would you suggest? I mean, you already suggested people look at the states and the counties and see what the law, how it pertains to their situations and things like that, and what they can do and
Right.
what they're not able to do. Aside from that,
Hmm.
what are, thinking outside the box, because I know it's it pertains to some of the work that you do as well, right? What are some of the things that you've tried to or implemented in cases like this?
Well, one of the biggest things that I try to convey, first of all, I can't control people. It took me, a while to figure that out. But um, I can tell you the biggest problem that what all of this stems from is that we live in a one size fits all
Mm,
society.
yes.
And so we define laws as one size fits all, or treatment packages, modalities, one size fits all. If a person is having this type of behavior, the book says it's this, therefore we treat it with XYZ.
Hmm.
And there's everybody's different, right? I mean, we all have
Right.
different chemical makeups. We all have different belief systems. We all have different lifestyles and cultures and all of that, right? And so to come in and say, here's one law and it's going to apply to every child over the age of 13 in this demographic. You've got poverty to address. You have, what somebody can afford for medical care. So, I was a proponent, and I'll get back to your question, but I was a proponent of we all need to talk to each other. I want the therapist to talk to the counselor, and I want the counselor to talk to the principal, and I want all of her teachers involved. And better yet, let me give you a list of people and phone numbers that she's known since birth that can tell you that this behavior is not normal for her.
Hmm.
But they don't talk to each other. At least, in my experience at that time, they weren't talking to each other. I've heard stories, of other parents saying the same thing, for
Right.
the last 15 years. So it's not something that's resolved by any means. Um, but that's our biggest problem is we're trying to fix this from a one size fits all perspective. And, it's not possible. So, I tell people to, call their lawmakers and, um, find somebody that resonates with what they're going through.
Right.
And, but I've not been one to, go to the state capitol and try to legislate for something, because I'm only one person and there's great people that do that work already.
Right.
But that's the biggest problem we have is we have to come at it from a perspective of one size is not going to fit all. One size might fit, a good amount of people, but we need also backup plans for those people who our treatment plans and everything don't work for.
Hmm.
And so we try to put everybody in the same box.
Yeah, I was just about to say we need to put people in like yourself that have had this experience, right? That are doing the work out here in the communities. The goal, to show them what actionable strategies look like, right?
Hmm.
And the
Yeah.
different ways to be able to use it in their various situations that may come about, right? Because you said it, you hit the nail on the head.
Right.
Everybody's going to be different, and so it's going to take understanding how to pivot through the situations, to begin to peel back the layers of that onion to get down to the root cause, um,
Right.
without pushing people away, and pushing them into a
Mhm.
situation to where they feel as if they're forced. But that
Mhm.
goes back to that term. It takes a village, right? It
Right.
takes a
I say it
village.
all the
We
time.
we need people in the village to stand up and go, no, these are our children. We don't get to experiment on them, right? And that's what
Right.
a lot of my frustration when it comes down to anything mental health, is that I feel as if these lawmakers are experimenting And then I think they do talk. They just don't talk to us. They talk to like the doctors and the pharmacists and go, we have this particular pill, but if this don't work, we have 100 different other pills. And what they don't tell people is that that can increase the suicidal ideation. You know what I'm saying? That can increase the depression, anxiety, and everything has a side effect, right? And it's
Well,
like,
as a side, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
no, go ahead, please, go ahead.
Well, as a side note, what I found interesting was my husband is part of the veteran medical, community. He's a veteran. He gets medical care from the VA. Anyway, they just recently did a test on him, blood test, and it came back and it gave him a list of, depending on what type of medical issue he had, whether it was, heart problems, or if he ever has mental, behavioral problems, whatever. It gave a list of medications that from this blood work, they ran his DNA and said, this list of medications will not work for your body chemistry. And so now he knows if he goes to the doctor and he needs a pain pill or he needs, some behavioral health treatment, don't give me this list of medications because it's not going to do any good in my system. It's just, biologically. And it's like, if we had that as just a standard test for even, just with our kids, right? To say, oh, well, let's not put them on this mental health, behavioral health medication, this, psychotic, whatever, because it's not going to help them. We'd get rid of this problem where we're giving out multiple kinds until we find the one that works. So, there's so many things that we can do to make the system better. But again, it comes down to our medical costs and our drug costs and who's willing to, cover, what procedures and all of that. Right now I'm going through a coaching class on how our brain is affected, chemically by what we eat. And this gentleman says our brain is the only organ in our body that we do not test for, like we, would test like our heart or our lungs to see, what's happening. For our brain, we just say, oh, their behavior is XYZ, give them this drug or give them this treatment. And he's done, 200,000 brain scans to find out trauma affects the brain this way, or, grief and loss affects it this way. And if we knew that, we would be able to treat it more effectively in real time. Right. So there's just so many things that we could do to make this system better. Talking to our lawmakers, having better medical treatment for the situation, and again, get out of this one size fits all mentality.
Understood. Yeah. And the LinkedIn user just said, it's a great segue into it. Individualized care is the key to mental wellness, right? And I totally agree. And what you said over there. I want to thank everybody who's tuning in on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, and YouTube. Thank you guys for tuning in. If you have any questions or comments, please put them in the comment section, and we'll get to them as we go. But also welcome my guest Tracy Oeser. She is here and she's sharing her journey of loss by suicide. And we having a great conversation. And now my next question to you, Tracy, and feel free not to answer it if you don't want to, but how was the grieving process for you? Because we grieve differently, right? We got people that go into a rabbit hole and get stuck there. We have people that they begin to express themselves in many, many different ways. Many ways. Mm-hmm. How was the grieving process for you?
Well, with everything, it's a process. So the night she died, I went into shock, I would guess. And so I put myself into compartmentalizing and, having to arrange funerals and memorial services and flowers and, all the stuff. Right. So I kind of put my grief to the side and I focused on keeping busy and doing my thing.
Okay.
But I'm also a mom and I'm also a human. So, I had my breakdowns, I mean, I forget where I heard it the other day, but somebody referenced, a blood curdling cry that, a mom will make when she loses her child. And,
Yeah.
I did that about day 3 and, at the funeral. Um, and so, but I had to throw myself back into work a week later because I had to pay the bills. I was still a single mom, right? So,
Yeah.
um, a lot of crying, a lot of keeping myself busy. I was exhausted a lot. My brain went through what we call the fog, so I was forgetting things, um, and I just kind of went in this mode of just trying to shut myself off. Now, fortunately, I don't have an addictive personality, so I
Mm.
didn't turn to any type of, drugs or alcohol or anything like that.
Yeah.
But it was just very hard to process anything outside of the normal day to day. Get up, get in the shower, go to work, come home, go to bed. And so that was kind of my first month or so. Um, and there's all the things that happen with suicide loss. You have people who walk away from you because they don't know how to handle your grief. So, I didn't have the amount of people to talk to once, the funeral was over, that I probably needed more people to talk to. Um, and so I hit about 6 months later, going, living like this. I had to drive by the funeral or the cemetery every day to go to work. And that just, killed me. So I said, I can't do this anymore. Decided I needed to, bail out of the place I was living and just relocate somewhere where nobody knew who I was, nobody knew the story, and we didn't have Facebook yet. So, or maybe it was like brand new, but not everybody was on it.
Right.
And so, nobody was Googling me to see who I was. I was just, some new girl in town. So I did. I moved 2,000 miles away to Las Vegas. Never had been there. My husband was getting a new job, and they relocated him there. And I said, "Yeah, let's go." And so I guess in retrospect, it was kind of an escape mechanism, right? I got to fight or flight. I got to get out of here. Um,
Right.
And so, moved there. Um, and I thought I was doing really well because nobody knew who I was and nobody knew what I was going through, until, I started hitting those first anniversaries and her first birthday.
Yeah.
And, I got a new job, didn't tell anybody at work, my background. I just simply said, oh, yeah, I got a couple kids, they're up in Washington. And that was good enough, for anybody. And then her first anniversary date came, and I was a mess. And so that was the day that my boss found out, that I'd lost a child to suicide. And, she was very great. She was very gracious. But she's like, I think you need to go home. I said, yeah, I think so. And so a lot of crying and a lot of questioning and a lot of whys. And, what was my part in this? What did I do, not do? Should have changed. We're really good as human beings to look back and say, oh, I should have done X, Y, Z.
Right.
But when you're in it in the moment, you don't know. And so, I was just trying to find my footing, basically. And what does this new normal look like for me? It was very interesting in that a lot of the things I used to enjoy before Chelsea died, I didn't enjoy anymore. I didn't even care if I did them or not. It was like I was a new person. It was like nothing, all the things that used to matter to me didn't matter. Current events didn't matter. I changed musical interests because it's like, I don't know where that switch in my brain came from. But along the way, I knew that if I did not put myself into some kind of peer support to understand what all this stuff was I was feeling, it wasn't going to improve. So I found a fantastic support group, and it was all survivors of suicide loss. So I, could sit there for 90 minutes and hear what, their experience was like, and I could resonate with those things. And once I could resonate with bits and pieces of their journey, then, I didn't feel as isolated. I didn't feel, like I was crazy. It was like, oh my goodness, this is normal how I'm feeling. And then I just kind of started advocating from there. The American Foundation for Suicide Prevention has their community walks that happen all over the country, throughout the year. So I, got involved with those. I did a couple of their overnight walks, where you walk all night. And the first one I went to was up in Seattle. So I thought, well, that's home, right? That's a good place to do this. And, I was out of shape and I made it about 4 miles out of 20. But, it was the point that I was there and I was, advocating and I was getting that support. So through the years, I've just tried to surround myself with different stories, different groups, see what they do, work with survivors on, what are they struggling with and what can we do to alleviate some of that. I can't fix it. If we could fix it, our suicide rates wouldn't be up to 50,000 a year.
Ain't that the truth?
But I can do what I can. I can do what I can in sharing my story and, be a voice for our survivor community, and help and educate people that suicide loss, is not like your typical loss. Losing a child is horrific. Suicide kind of puts this different nuance on it, different spin on it.
I was going to say, because we have that in common where we both have lost a child, and I was just thinking right before you must have been reading my mind, I was like, when you lose a child to suicide, there's a certain element that goes along with it. And, that adds to it. And I totally agree with that. Totally agree with that. Now, I have to ask, because being a mother, you're speaking from the mother's point of view, from a more personable point of view. Now, from that point of view, how are your other children handling it, and as well as your husband at the time? How are they dealing with it? Because they happen to deal with the loss of their sibling, and your husband is watching you go through this, and there's a whole lot of things that go in, but you're watching it, and not having the answers to give anyone. But what are you watching? How are the children handling this?
It's a very interesting dynamic. So I learned very early on that even if we're biologically connected or in the same family, we all grieve differently. So my son, who's 14 months older than my daughter, he chose to go the way of drugs and alcohol. And, and I'm not saying, I know I'm on the internet, so, anybody that says, oh, you should share this, anybody that knows him knows he had an issue. But it took a good 10 years probably for him to get out of that rut. His dad, so Chelsea's dad, he's chosen to not get any help for the last 17 years. He may have some friends he talks to. I doubt it. He kind of chooses to self-medicate too. So, again, everybody's different. I had a lot of, family members that, went to anger and they were mad at me because of the situation. And, I had to take a step back and say, okay, their method of survival here is going to be different than mine. They didn't biologically give birth to her, so they're not going to have those aspects of, having to break that bond. So as far as my current husband, they were having some issues. So part of her, um, part of Chelsea's mental issues and the lie got her taken out of my house. We're stemming from him. So with him, I had and still currently have to some degree, a lot of anger. He has a lot of anger towards her. So it breaks my heart because I can't fix that. I can just hope that, he gets some help someday for that. And I don't like to go into detail about what that was all about, but
No, you're fine.
just, like I said, a lot of dynamics that happen within the house. There's a high risk of divorce within couples after they lose a child to suicide because of the different methods of grieving, that they do. Some people like to just talk it out, right? And then some people like to shut down. So yeah, I had to learn very early on that, we were all going to be grieving. I had to hold space, right, for how they were grieving and not dictate how they should grieve through that.
Okay. And that was hopefully that answers your questions, courthouse perspective. The comment was, did you guys bond over the grief? And you just kind of like walked right into the comment. So hopefully that answers questions. We're all different, right? And unfortunately, there's no blueprint for this. There's definitely no blueprint. I'm a big proponent in telling people, do grief the way that you need to do grief, right? Whatever that looks like for you. And I do get the addiction aspect of it and all of these different things, because one thing I do realize nowadays we have organizations, right? We have a lot more support than what we had back when I was coming up, right? And so it is there. It's just a matter of figuring out what is going to work for you. And you had said something,
Right.
and it's something that I am also a big advocate of, is understanding the language that we use when we can't articulate, right? Anger.
Mhm.
A lot of men, we turn to anger because we don't know how. We have very deep emotions. We just don't know how to put the words to it. So we do what comes naturally for us, right? Because that's the way we've always been taught. You don't cry. You gotta man up. So how do we express ourselves? How do we cry? We cry through anger, right? That is our way of saying, this is how I'm hurting. When people don't understand the language, and this is universal across the board, even with men and women. Some people go towards the isolation, we throw ourselves into work. We get creative. We want to build things, but this is, the one common thing about it is that we often have to be alone when we're doing it, right? To keep others from feeling as if they do have to fix it, right? And as a mother, as a husband, as a wife, and as a friend, we the grievers often feel as if we need to protect others from our pain. We're like not feeling like a burden, right? And things like that. So we have a tendency of pushing off our stuff and only to have people leave us, right? And I'm like, well, what was the purpose of me doing that if he was just going to leave anyway, right? I still have to deal with this.
Right.
And in a lot of ways, most people like myself, I enjoyed the solitude. I enjoyed the isolation because it allowed me to think. But now here's the downside to it. That's where I ran into that darkness. And I realized my demons were a lot stronger than me at that time. I had not had the strength. I pushed my demons to the side and thought I had them under control. And in my most vulnerable moments is when they showed up and showed me that they were in more control of me than I was of them. And
Right.
that was,
Right.
that was that self-talk, like, I don't care, like, who cares? Just them, very demented things, and things like that. But you know, when did you have your aha moment and began to be, I know you talked about it during the 5K and becoming an advocate. Right around the time, right around in that time, did you say, you know what, we need to change these things? And going into the work that you do, tell people about the work. Before we get into that, tell people about the work that you do.
Well, it kind of all segues together, so I can probably answer both at the same time.
Okay.
So, in the midst of going to the support group that I attended for suicide loss survivors, I was hearing stories by different survivors saying, I can't acknowledge others, I can't acknowledge people out in the public that I know from this group. And I thought, well, why? Well, that was dictated from the support group itself of, that we're in this little solitary space sharing everything that's going on. Therefore, we don't want people out in the outside world to know that we're feeling all of these feelings because it's not, societally correct. And so anyway, the more that I heard these things and the more I saw other people struggling with the same things, I just got angry, simple answer. I just got angry. And I said, this isn't right. We aren't going to change society unless we're talking about it. And so at that point, so this was like 2011, I said, no, I need to be out here advocating for other survivors and what we're feeling. And I want to go out and I want to talk about the things that nobody says. I want to tell people, kind of on your previous point, I want to tell people that one of the major things we don't talk about is our high rates of suicide by people who've lost somebody to suicide and didn't get the support they needed. And that's a really big problem out there. But again, we don't talk about it. So I said, no, I'm gonna go and I'm gonna create my company, Journey Thru Grief, and I'm gonna go out and I'm gonna tell everybody, hey, this is the ugly part of suicide loss. This is people can't just turn it off in a couple weeks and go back to normal. It doesn't work that way.
Right.
And so, I talked to everybody from HR departments to medical personnel to, one thing that frustrates me is that we spend so much time on prevention, which is important. We should, but we spend so much time on prevention. We don't look at the aftermath of a suicide. And one suicide, the average amount affected is 135 people. And so if you do the math and you say, okay, we'll round up, because I'm pretty sure when the new stats comes out, we're going to hit 50,000 people that we probably lost in 2023. If we multiply that by the 135, you're up to like 6.2 million new people affected by suicide annually. So what are we doing for those people? We're not doing enough for those people because we have private support groups within Facebook that moms and siblings, they're all in there venting all of these same things over, and it breaks my heart because they shouldn't have to. They should be able to just go right to a support system and get what they need. And so that's, where we need to evolve to. So that's what I do. This last year, I broke off and I took that educational piece out of Journey Thru Grief and I created Postvention Collective. And that's where I'm going to go and speak on resilience, speak on suicide loss, speak on Postvention, which is what suicide loss is called. And Journey Thru Grief is, solely to support the loss survivor directly. And we have, different means to do that. But it's so hard to get the messaging out to the general public because the common response back is, oh, that doesn't affect me. I didn't lose somebody to suicide, so I don't care about that. And I'm happy. I'm happy if you did not lose somebody to suicide, because it is horrible. But I guarantee you know somebody that has. And the person that you're working next, sitting next to today could be going through the worst nightmare of their life right now, and you don't even know it. Because as a society, we are taught to just bounce back, go back to our normal behavior, go back to work, and pretend like nothing's going on because we don't want to get in trouble at work. And we're not fixing the problem. We're not doing anything to help people. And so, I get loud and proud even on LinkedIn and say, you know what, I'll come in, I'll do a training for you about what suicide loss looks like. I'll tell you, how your coworkers can be helped by you if they are in this situation, or, here's how you can get help if you're in this situation and you're not alone. But so many loss survivors think they're alone because nobody will reach out. Yes, I know nobody's a broad statement, but a good portion of people do not reach out to those who have lost somebody to suicide because of fear of, not wanting to hurt that person or get that person upset. I have people say, well, I don't want to talk to that person because I don't want to make them cry. Well, I guarantee you they're in the bathroom crying on break or at lunch or in their car or whatever. And yes, you might say something that makes them cry. They got to get that emotion out. And, it probably wasn't you that really caused that. That's just how it happens, right? So that's what I do. I go out and I try to, just tell everybody, hey, pay attention to what's going on. Now I also speak to the fact that, and I'm probably going to take a lot of flack for this, but it scares me that, and it being Mental Health Awareness Month, we tell everybody, if you're struggling with your mental health, go get help. Yes, do that. But we also need to look at how much training has our therapists and counselor, behavioral health people, how much training have they had on suicide bereavement or suicide ideation? And, I purposely went back to school and I got my bachelor's and my master's in psychology to see how that process is going through college. And they're not, unless you have a professor who specifically puts something related to suicide in their curriculum, it's highly likely that that student is not learning anything about suicide. And so it takes graduating, going for their licensure to work as many hours as they need to get any type of training. That's not good. That's not good, because what happens is those people who needed the help, especially for suicide loss, come into our peer support groups and say, well, I tried to find a therapist, but my therapist referred me out because they didn't know what to do with me.
Right.
Or I don't have a therapist anymore because the therapist I had is telling me just to, get over it. It's grief. Well, no, it's complex grief, and we need to handle it a little differently. There's just, I get on my soapbox about various things that I note, the system is broken. Counselors don't have enough time in their schedule, and they're having to struggle with getting everybody into the schedule. So now we're burning out our therapists because, they're overworked, and that's not fair, because they have good intentions, to help people and get them back to a normal function. The whole system is just broken. And so the best I can do, is get out and tell everybody, hey, our system's broken. What can we do? And that's why I got my master's is in psychology with an emphasis in life coaching, because I said, how can we take coaching and support the loss survivor, when they can't get into their therapist or a credible therapist? Let's look at coaching and how coaching could support a loss survivor so they can talk it out and get out some frustration. Your user there says we never get over it. No, you don't. But we can have, we can receive credible ways to try to live with it. live
Right.
with it effectively so we're functional.
Right. It's growing with your is growing through the challenges that you're going to be experiencing. Um, I got a comment over here, and I'm going to let you. Um, they're asking for your info, and so which we're getting to that. And I did put her info on the in the description on the YouTube channel, so if you want to. But she's also going to share it at the end. So yeah, you get your pens and pencils or paper ready for that as well. But to go back to what the comment, just to elaborate on that a little bit. You don't ever get over it, but you have to grow with it, because grief is one of those things that will be with you. And one of the biggest things that I think is a great proponent in helping those in mental health is having people with lived experience that have walked the path, right, and have gone through their struggles,
Yep.
because they come from a more empathetic place and understanding the benefits of communication overall, right? And
Mhm.
when you have individuals like yourself and like many other people, and I'm not putting down therapists, I'm not putting down counselors or anything like
No.
that. But some of the biggest challenges, and this is coming from a more personable place, when one of the biggest challenges that I've seen is that the lack of not have gone through it, so to speak, right? I know when I
Right.
was looking for help, they try to give me a counselor. My first question to the counselor, and this is what really deterred me, and nothing against the lady, I had to go back and apologize and go, look, I'm sorry I did that. But my question was, how do you know what I'm going through? And her reply to me was, I've never lost a child before. I said, well, then you can't help me. So don't do your little counselor
Right.
thing over there. I'm not going to give you the opportunity to psychoanalyze me, because then you're going to find out that I'm really just crazy right now, right? Which I understood. I
Mhm.
understand now that it was part of the new normal that I was starting to transition into, right? And coming from a place of not understanding what grief was, how
Right.
trauma affects the brain. Um, it was a place of uncertainty, but also there was something that my son's mom had said to me, which resonates to me to this day, and how I maneuvered other people's world, um, with the understanding of this sort of grief can kill you. And as simple as it is, it's such a deep quote, but you never understand it until you're in it and walking through it, because you
Yeah.
got to go through some things. Your new normal is going to require
She's
you
right.
focus a lot of self-care, a lot of patience, um, a lot of self-understanding, right? And
Yeah.
a lot
Oh,
of
I tell
and
people all the time they need to get their grief out because it will physically take a toll on your body.
right,
I ended up with
yeah,
a hiatal hernia within a couple months of the grief because I was repressing my grief. I didn't realize it, right? But I had to repress it in order to
yeah,
function,
yeah,
go to work,
yeah.
do all of that. And my body was just retaliating and saying, no. You know? So yes, your son's mother was correct that it
Yeah.
will kill you if you do not do the steps you need to do for healing.
This is very true. Grief and understanding. Thank you for following. Thank you for tuning in as well. And you guys, I mean, I'm loving this conversation. And please, if you keep bringing in the questions and comments before we begin to wrap it up and things like that. But yeah, so my next question is, how can people find you?
So Journey Through Grief has a website, and it's journey through THRU grief.com. You can also send an email to info@journeythroughgrief.com. Journey Through Grief has a new YouTube channel. So That one's a little crazy. You got to put the @ symbol and then Journey Through Grief to actually get to the channel itself. And we have a podcast, Journey Through Your Suicide Loss. That one I decided to spell through the right way. So it's just the regular Journey Through Your Suicide Loss. Because, again, I try to push it's not a one size fits all situation. And so loss survivors also don't grieve the same way. Some may do better with video. Some may do better with, reading. I have a book, The New World of Suicide Loss. That's on Amazon. That's specifically tailored for the new survivor. Very simple, 35 pages long. I recommend anybody get it for a survivor they know, because I just spell out just very simply, here's what you're going to feel, and it's normal, and find some support is basically the gist of this book. But so many people have come back and said, thank you for putting out something that's just very, very simple. Because when you're going through grief, you can't take in a whole bunch of information and try to process.
Right.
But yeah, so email, like I said, I'm on LinkedIn. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on Facebook.
Do me a favor. Take a minute and just put your info in the comment section for those that are tuning in right now. They can copy and paste it and go and find you and things like that. The book, I definitely would. I definitely want to check that out, because I do. I work with a lot of quick. Huh? Yeah, I definitely work with a lot of men, and I think in the way that men are aggressive, in the way that we handle grief, something like that could actually help them have a better understanding. And like you said, maybe we can curb this suicide, the suicide rate, across the board, and get people the help that they need, and deserve, and deserve. So while you're doing that, I have a question for you. How can people support the work that you do?
So support. Again, I am an LLC, so it's a gift. It can't be considered a donation or anything. But, I do take funding to pay for these books that I give out, or, other expenses that come up to keep the website going, keep the podcast going, all of that. So the button, like I said, on my website is great, or just, reach out to me. And, if you want to give a monetary gift, that's great. If you have a, grant that you can use, we can talk about that. And just share the word that there are help for survivors, as you come across people that need that work. All right, I think I'm in. Let me get this in here really quick.
Now, before I let you go, if you could leave the audience with something, what would you give them?
Check on the people that you love. Make sure that they're in a good place mentally. If you have a person who's lost somebody to suicide, try not to hide from them. If you don't know what to say to them, tell that person, I don't know what to say. I know that you're probably, going through hell right now. And, can I just sit with you? Loss survivors predominantly want to talk. They just want to talk it all out so that it can, resonate in their brain of what just happened. And so they just want somebody to sit and just acknowledge them. So I would say, if you know somebody that has gone through this type of loss, just be there, because they have so many people who have already abandoned them, because, people do that. I don't know why. It's not letting me post. I'm sorry.
That's okay. You sent me over your information.
Put that in there.
When you already sent me over the information.
Yeah.
So everybody, do me a favor, if you haven't already, go over to, if you're looking for information, head over to the YouTube channel or check out any of the events that I've posted up on Facebook and LinkedIn. And her information is there. Please reach out to her. Go get that book. Support those people in your life that are struggling right now, because they need you more than what you think. Don't be afraid to talk to them, please, because as Tracy just said, she's speaking from a place of experience. And, and this is universal. We want to talk, we want to talk. So, it's not all about trying to fix. It's about listening. It's about showing up for each other, and just holding that space with those people, because you don't know, if you've never experienced it. And Tracy, correct me if I'm wrong. That is a powerful gesture, to be able to hold space with someone and just allow them to be, right, and allow them to grieve the way that they need to, right. And I'm a huge proponent in that. Be a visitor in those people's places. Right. Stop asking what they need, and saying, and be at the store picking up stuff and saying, "Hey, I'm on my way over," right? And don't do it for everybody. Don't push yourself on everybody. But I'm that guy. I will call you up and be like, "Hey, I'm at the store picking up some things. I'm on my way over." So I'm not giving you a chance to shut me out, right? I'm letting you know that I'm going to show up, right? And you're going to let me in, because for one thing that I've noticed, that if I show up with groceries, you're going to open up the door, because you don't want the groceries to be outside, and I'm not going anywhere anyway. So you might as well open up the door and let me come and put them in your fridge. And then also, like on the way over there, I'm stopping off at KFC, Church's, right, Popeyes, or something like that. Whatever comfort food that I know that you like, I'm gonna pick it up and be like, "Hey."
Oh, I'd open the door for KFC.
Right, yeah, I'm like, do you want some? Look, I just picked up some KFC. You want some? What sort of size would you like? You understand the conversation that I just had right there, right? Like, I'm not giving you a chance to retreat into that dark place, because I wish somebody would have did it for me. I wish somebody would have said, "Tony, I'm at the store right now. Like, you want some mashed potatoes? You want some macaroni? I just picked up some chicken. You know what I'm saying? I'm on my way over. What would you like to drink?" Right? And come on over, man. I'm not going to turn you. Most people that are going through grief aren't going to turn you away, because that hurt is a different beast. It's a totally different beast. But yeah, I digress.
Well, we have to get to where we don't say, "What do you need?" We need to, just like you said, say, "Hey, I'm on my way over. Do you need milk? I'm bringing milk if you need milk." They'll know, right? But to say they don't know what they need, because they're trying to just, not collapse and cry. So
exactly. Tracy, thank you for being there. Such a powerful voice. And please let me know what I can do to help get the word out there. I'd love to have you back on the show and talk about more in depth about actionable strategies and things like that. If you guys are all for that, please stay tuned. But yeah, I would love to have you on there. You pick a topic, we'll talk about it. This is your field of knowledge, and very knowledgeable, very, very knowledgeable. Thank you for the gems that you've been putting out there, for sharing your story. Such a powerful voice. And I look forward to more that we can do in this world. And you guys, if you're looking to support her or anything like that, please.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. I'm glad to reach your listeners.
Of course. I appreciate you. For everybody on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Twitch, and YouTube, thank you guys for tuning in today. Thank you guys for the comments and the questions that you guys have put up there. And we're going to be doing this again. Tracy, again, thank you for being a part of this. And for everyone who has tuned in, if you haven't already, head over to my YouTube channel. And if you caught the last part of this, her full episode will be up on that channel. Hit that subscribe button. It's the Grief Let's Talk About It podcast on YouTube. Hit that bell notification so you can notified every time that we drop a new episode. But also, if you know anyone who can benefit from these conversations that we have, please share these with them. Or if you have a story that you would like to share, please reach out to me. We'd love to have you on as a guest. Tracy, thank you again for being on. Thank you for being such an amazing guest. And thank you for everyone who supports the channel. We will see you guys in the next episode. And yeah, you guys remember, the support is out there. It's just a matter of connecting with the right people. Until next time, you guys enjoy the rest of your day.
Yep.
Peace.